The ballroom lights blasted against Grant Ellison's face as reporters surged forward, shouting questions that cut through the air like blades. His hands trembled while he signed the irrevocable family trust, each stroke of ink echoing across the room louder than the camera shutters. The document transferred millions to Maya and the unborn child, a public confession of his failures and a promise to protect them, even if she never came home. Before he could breathe, Rosa Delgado stepped in with a sharp nod, signaling law enforcement. Officers swept in, cuffing Victoria Hale as Conrad Pierce bolted toward a side exit. Flashbulbs exploded. Then Maya gasped, a deep, painful sound, and clutched her stomach as fluid spilled across the marble floor. "Grant, this is happening now," she whispered. Sirens wailed outside. Everything froze. If that moment hit your chest and pulled you straight into their storm, don't leave just yet. More truth, more betrayal, and more heart-stopping revelations wait on the other side of the story. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss these powerful, emotional journeys. Tap that like button if you're already feeling the intensity, and share this video with someone who loves dramatic twists and stories that feel real enough to touch. And before you keep watching, comment below. Tell us what you think is going to happen next, or which character already has your heart. Your support keeps stories like this alive, and this one is just getting started. The night everything fell apart. The Hamptons glowed like a postcard that evening, warm lights dancing off champagne glasses as the ocean murmured behind the estate. Grant Ellison worked the room with the confidence of a man who believed every camera adored him. But Maya, standing near the terrace in a soft ivory dress, felt the distance between them stretching like a tightening thread. She'd watched him drifting for months, buried in bored politics and Conrad Pierce's shadow. Still, she carried herself with quiet grace, masking the unease in her chest. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of their anniversary, not another public performance where her presence felt like an afterthought. She held her glass a little tighter, whispering to the tiny life inside her belly that no one else yet knew about. Maya stepped into Gala's main hall, where chandeliers scattered gold over a sea of tuxedos and glittering gowns. Conversations rose and fell like waves, and flashes from reporters' cameras painted streaks of light across the room. Grant stood with Conrad Pierce and Victoria Hale, both glued to their phones as if they owned the night. A donor approached Maya warmly, asking how she'd been balancing her gallery work with getting ready for motherhood. Maya blinked, startled, realizing how close that question cut. She simply smiled, giving nothing away. Grant glanced over at her, just long enough to acknowledge her presence, not long enough to really see her. Something within her shifted uneasily. The man she married was shrinking behind the empire he claimed to control. The moment cracked when a board member, smug with too much champagne, clinked his glass and called across the crowd. "So, Grant, were we finally hearing baby news? Or is Maya still too busy running that little art place?" Laughter scattered in messy bursts. Grant, distracted and irritated, waved a dismissive hand. "Maya's not exactly focused on family right now," he said sharply. "She's easily overwhelmed." His words sliced through the hall, louder than the string quartet playing in the corner. Maya froze. Heat flooded her face as whispers crawled across the room. He didn't know she was pregnant, and still he'd use her private life as a shield for his frustrations. The room blurred, and the humiliation landed like a stone in her stomach. Maya's breath tightened as she set her glass on the nearest table. The humiliation wasn't about embarrassment. It was the clarity it delivered. Grant no longer protected her. He no longer questioned Conrad's influence or Victoria's media strategies. He simply reacted, letting the wrong people steer him. She turned toward the terrace doors before anyone noticed the emotion rising in her throat. Outside, the salty wind cut through the static in her mind. She placed a hand on her belly, steadying herself. "I won't let you become part of this circus," she whispered to her unborn child. She'd spent months trying to ignore the red flags, whispers that stopped when she entered rooms, unexplained financial documents tied to her gallery, and Grant's growing distance. Tonight confirmed everything. As she walked toward the exit, her phone buzzed sharply. Maya paused, expecting a message from Sam or perhaps Evelyn checking in. Instead, an unknown number flashed across the screen. She hesitated, thumb hovering, then opened a message. A single sentence appeared, chilling in its precision. Leave quietly. They're building a case against you, and your pregnancy gives them leverage. Her heart dropped. No one, not Grant, not Evelyn, not Sam, knew she was pregnant. Only her doctor and the clinic system held that information. A cold realization spread through her. Someone inside Ellison Grant had accessed her medical records. Someone close. Someone watching her. She glanced back into the glowing hall, at Conrad's smirk and Victoria's calculating eyes. The walls were closing in faster than she'd imagined. Maya stepped outside, distancing herself from the music and murmurs spilling from the mansion. She paced along the stone balcony, piecing together the warning with the strange events of the past weeks. Emails had disappeared from her gallery account. A donor mentioned an investment she'd never agreed to. Grant dismissed everything as overthinking. But now the puzzle sharpened. Someone wanted her vulnerable. Someone was preparing to frame her. She felt a calm resolve settle over her fear. Her pregnancy, which should have been a private joy, had become ammunition for people who didn't even know her. She whispered to the child inside her, "I won't let them touch you." Her phone buzzed again, a second message. "Don't confront him. Just leave." This wasn't panic. It was strategy. Maya returned to Gala entrance, but not to stay. The valet raised a brow as she handed him her ticket, her expression unreadable. Inside the hall, Grant raised a glass and some polished toast, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath his life. That ignorance hurt her, but also freed her. She wasn't running because she was weak. She was leaving because she was smart. The car pulled up, and she slid into the leather seat, inhaling deeply. She didn't call Grant. Not tonight. Not like this. She texted Samir Khan instead, her attorney and friend. "We need to activate the plan. Tonight." His reply came instantly. "Say nothing to anyone. I'll prepare everything." That confirmation became the anchor she needed. The city light stretched across the highway as Maya stared out the window, her reflection flickering over the skyline. She remembered the shift she'd noticed in Grant. Filtered messages, altered calendar alerts, assistants acting cagey. She had suspected Conrad, maybe even Victoria, but she never imagined they'd cross into her medical privacy. That crossed a line she couldn't ignore. She placed both hands across her belly, whispering, "I choose you first." This wasn't about revenge or pride. It was about survival, protection, and clarity. She finally understood that her presence in Grant's life had become a threat to the people circling him. If she stayed, she'd become the perfect scapegoat for a crime she didn't commit. Leaving wasn't abandonment. It was self-defense. By the time her driver stopped at the penthouse, Maya had shifted into quiet, controlled motion. She packed efficiently. Documents, essentials, prenatal vitamins, a portable drive containing gallery financials to prove her innocence. She didn't cry. Not once. She left a letter on the marble counter, not emotional or desperate, but factual and firm. She explained her concerns, her suspicions, and her need for space until she understood the full threat. She didn't mention the pregnancy. That revelation belonged to a safer moment. She placed her wedding ring beside the letter, not as an ending, but as a pause. As she closed the penthouse door for what might be the last time, she whispered, "Be better than this, Grant." And she meant it. Downstairs, Sam waited in a black SUV, his expression tight with concern. "You're sure you want to do this?" he asked softly as she climbed in. Maya nodded once. "I don't have a choice. They're coming for me, and they think Grant will never see it." Sam handed her an encrypted phone and a new travel itinerary. Seabrook, Oregon. Quiet, secure, and the gallery revenue keeps you comfortable. You'll be safe there while I build your case. The SUV pulled away from the curb, and Maya watched the New York skyline vanish behind rising buildings. She didn't know when she would return, or what would be left of her marriage when she did. But she knew this. She was choosing safety, truth, and her child above everything else. Manhattan, the quiet exit. Grant woke to an empty penthouse, unaware that the silence was about to reshape his life. He assumed Maya had gone for an early gallery meeting, something she often did when she needed space. But the hours stretched, and unease crept in when he found her side of the closet partially empty. Her perfume lingered faintly, a soft reminder of the woman he'd taken for granted. He checked his phone. No messages, no missed calls. Confusion twisted into irritation. She could have said something, he muttered, convincing himself this was another emotional retreat. It wasn't until he spotted the letter on the marble counter, folded with painful precision, that his heartbeat began to shift. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He opened the letter with stiff fingers, expecting hurt feelings or accusations. Instead, the words hit him like cold water. Maya's handwriting was steady, not angry, but clear-eyed. She wrote about feeling watched, about unexplained financial documents tied to her gallery, about odd behaviors from his staff. She mentioned her concerns about Conrad and Victoria, how their influence over him had grown. She didn't blame him. She blamed the environment around him. She didn't ask for understanding. She asked for distance until she could grasp the full truth. Grant's chest tightened. This wasn't a dramatic exit. This was strategy. She feared something he didn't even see. As he reread her words, his irritation dissolved, replaced by a slow, spreading fear. Grant searched the penthouse, hoping to find more answers, and found a slim folder tucked inside her desk drawer. Inside were copies of financial ledger entries that listed Maya as an approving party for transactions she had never been involved in. His jaw clenched. Who put her name on internal company documents? Why? He flipped through the pages, recognizing patterns that didn't belong. It was subtle, almost invisible, but intentional. Someone was setting her up, and he'd been too distracted to notice. The humiliation he'd caused her last night now felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Maya wasn't overreacting. She was protecting herself from something he should have seen long before now. He grabbed his keys and rushed out, heading straight for the Ellison Grand headquarters in Midtown. The ride felt longer than ever, each red light taunting him with what he didn't know. When he burst into his office, Conrad and Victoria were already there, sipping coffee like nothing was amiss. They exchanged glances that felt too synchronized. "Where's Maya?" Victoria asked a little too quickly. Grant studied her face, noticing, for the first time, the hardness behind her polished smile. "She left," Grant said slowly. "And I need to understand why these documents have her name on them." Conrad lifted an eyebrow, feigning confusion. "What documents?" But Grant wasn't fooled. He saw something flicker across Conrad's expression. Annoyance, maybe even panic. Grant didn't confront him directly. Not yet. Instead, he stormed into his private office and called Evelyn. When she answered, her voice was already trembling. "Grant, I heard what happened at the gala." He closed his eyes, remembering Maya's face when he dismissed her so carelessly. "Mom, something's wrong." She didn't just leave, she left afraid. Evelyn hesitated before speaking. "You need to come to the condo. There's something I need to tell you." That sentence alone made his stomach twist. He arrived 15 minutes later, finding her pacing the living room. Evelyn took a breath and looked him straight in the eyes. "Your father left behind secrets, and some people in your company would do anything to keep those secrets buried." Grant sank into the nearest chair as Evelyn continued, her voice cracking with guilt. She explained how she'd begun to suspect Conrad months earlier, how he'd insisted certain files stay sealed, how he discouraged Grant from reviewing old ledgers, how he and Victoria managed every public narrative. "I didn't know the extent," she admitted. "I thought they were just protecting the brand." "Protecting you." Grant clenched his jaw. "And what about Maya? Why didn't you defend her?" Evelyn swallowed hard. "Because Conrad convinced me she would expose things she didn't understand, that she was becoming a liability. I believed him, and I was wrong." Her hands trembled. "Grant, your father left a mess behind, and Conrad is trying to bury it by sacrificing anyone he can, including Maya." Grant leaned back, breath shaking, staring at the evidence spread across his desk. The betrayal wrapped around him like a cold fog. But beneath it was something stronger, a rising, unshakable need to get Maya back safely. Not romantically, not with promises, but with truth, protection, and accountability. He gathered every document he'd found and forwarded it to Rosa Delgado, who responded within minutes. I can build a case, but you need to be ready for public fallout. Grant didn't care. His company, his name, his reputation. They were meaningless compared to Maya and their child. He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked out his office with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. The war for the truth had begun, and he wasn't losing Maya again. Grant pressed a hand over his eyes, fighting to breathe as guilt and panic collided inside him. Maya was pregnant. She had been carrying their child through all the chaos he had ignored, through the humiliation he'd caused, through the manipulation he had failed to stop. Evelyn touched his shoulder gently. She didn't tell you because she didn't feel safe. And honestly, I don't blame her. Grant stood abruptly, anger no longer scattered but sharply focused. Conrad, Victoria, every person who touched Maya's privacy, every hand involved in placing her name on fake financial documents. They had crossed a line no one comes back from. I'm going to fix this, he said quietly. I don't care what it costs. Grant returned to the office with a different fire burning in him. He didn't confront Conrad or Victoria yet. He needed proof, and he needed leverage. He locked himself in his office and dug into the old financial archives his father had left sealed. It took hours of bypassing passwords and buried folders before he finally found it. A hidden chain of accounts linking laundered money to Ellis and Grant's earliest expansion. His father had been involved. Deeply. Worse. Conrad had been the financial architect behind the cover-up, and Victoria had managed years of media narratives to protect them. Maya had stumbled too close, and instead of protecting her, Grant had helped push her out the door. Grant leaned back, breast shaking, staring at the evidence spread across his desk. The betrayal wrapped around him like a cold fog, but beneath it was something stronger, a rising, unshakable need to get Maya back safely. Not romantically, not with promises, but with truth, protection, and accountability. He gathered every document he'd found and forwarded it to Rosa Delgado, who responded within minutes. I can build a case, but you need to be ready for public fallout. Grant didn't care. His company, his name, his reputation. They were meaningless compared to Maya and their child. He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked out his office with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. The war for the truth had begun, and he wasn't losing Maya again. Seabrook, Oregon, a different kind of strength. Seabrook greeted Maya with a quiet she hadn't felt in years. The coastal air rolled in cool and clean, brushing against her face as she stepped out of the rideshare in front of the small cottage Sam secured for her. The ocean wasn't far. She could hear its slow heartbeat behind the hills. The cottage was modern, simple, and peaceful, exactly what she needed. She set her bags down and pressed a hand to her belly, grounding herself. Here, no one knew her name, her marriage, or the empire collapsing behind her. She wasn't Grant Ellison's wife tonight. She was simply a woman starting over for the sake of her child. For the first time in weeks, she inhaled without trembling. Morning light slipped through the curtains as Maya brewed coffee and looked out at the quiet street. Children rode bikes, neighbors waved at passing cars, and the world felt disarmingly normal. She walked into town, drawn to a charming bookstore cafe that smelled of cinnamon and old paper. Marilyn Avery, the owner, greeted her with a bright smile that didn't pry or judge. "First time in Seabrook?" she asked, handing Maya a latte. "Just passing through," Maya replied softly. But the warmth in Marilyn's eyes said she recognized someone carrying too many heavy things. Maya sat by the window, sipping the latte while her mind traced everything she'd left behind. Here, no one whispered about scandals or board meetings. Here, she could breathe. Days settled into a quiet rhythm. Maya volunteered to help at the bookstore's weekly children's art sessions, her own artistic background giving her a place to belong without needing to explain her past. She found comfort in the simple joy of guiding little hands covered in paint, their laughter sharp and honest. Marilyn watched her with a knowing gentleness, sensing there was more to Maya's story than she let on. The cottage bills were easy to manage. Her gallery profits continued flowing steadily thanks to Sam's oversight. She wasn't surviving. She was rebuilding. Every afternoon, she walked along the coastline, letting the sea wind loosen the knots in her heart. But even in the peace of Seabrook, The world she escaped found ways to whisper its presence. One afternoon, a group of tourists at the cafe discussed a trending clip from the Hamptons Gala, Grant's careless remark echoing through online debates. Maya sat frozen for a second, hearing her husband's voice spill through their phone speakers. "She's easily overwhelmed," he had joked. The tourists laughed, oblivious to the woman sitting only a table away. Maya turned the page of her magazine slowly, refusing to let her breath shake. She wasn't running because of that moment alone. She was here because the moment revealed how unsafe she had become. But still, hearing Grant's voice hurt in ways she didn't know how to describe. In the evenings, Maya lit candles in the cottage and played soft music as she prepared simple meals. She kept her prenatal vitamins on the table, a quiet reminder of why she had left. Every movement, every choice, revolved around protecting the small heartbeat inside her. Sam kept her updated through secure messages. "No changes yet," he texted. "But Conrad is making aggressive moves. Victoria, too. Stay put." Maya felt strangely calm. She'd survived the hardest part, leaving. Now she had to stay patient while the truth unraveled. And as days turned into weeks, she realized she was no longer afraid of being alone. She was afraid of what would happen if she didn't stay strong. News traveled slowly to Seabrook, but when it arrived, it always cut deep. A business newsletter Sam forwarded showed Ellis and Grand's stock dipping amid rumors of internal conflict. Bloggers speculated about marital trouble, though none had the truth right. Still, Maya felt a pang of guilt. She didn't want Grant to fail. She wanted him to wake up. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and stepped out onto the cottage porch. The ocean wind brushed her face as she closed her eyes. "You deserve better from both of us," she whispered to the child growing inside her. She wasn't angry anymore, just tired. She hoped Grant would find the truth, not for her sake, but for his own salvation. One crisp morning, Marilyn approached Maya after the kids' art session. "You've got a good heart," she said gently, handing Maya a warm muffin. "But you're holding something heavy. You don't have to tell me, but just know this town keeps secrets safe." Maya smiled gratefully. She didn't need judgment. She needed space. What she didn't know was that Marilyn recognized the last name on her credit card. Years ago, Marilyn had worked at a Manhattan accounting firm that handled luxury corporate accounts. She'd seen the Ellison name before, and the scandal swallowed under PR strategies. But she said nothing. Instead, she became the quiet anchor Maya didn't know she needed, offering comfort without curiosity. Maya continued her art lessons, her belly growing rounder as the weeks passed. The children adored her, and their parents often lingered to thank her for bringing creativity to their afternoons. Yet every night, when she lay in bed, she wondered about Grant. Did he know she was pregnant now? Had he pieced together the truth? Or was he still blinded by the people she'd tried so hard to warn him about? She missed a version of him who used to listen, who used to laugh, who used to dream with her about a family. But missing him didn't weaken her resolve. Love didn't mean putting herself or her child in danger. She knew that now. One evening, Sam sent an encrypted update. Progress. Evelyn helping. Rosa uncovered more. Stay where you are. Maya exhaled slowly, gripping her phone as a swirl of relief and sorrow washed through her. She never expected Evelyn, stern, protective Evelyn, to step onto her side. It meant something had shifted back in New York. Pieces were moving. Truth was rising. She gazed out at the sunset over the water, the sky painted in gold and violet. "We're almost through the dark," she whispered to her belly. She didn't know when Grant would finally understand the depth of what she'd endured, but she hoped, for their child's sake, that he would grow into the man he once promised to be. That night, Maya placed her sketchbook on her lap and drew a small, peaceful horizon, the kind she hoped her daughter would grow up knowing. She had traded luxury for safety, status for clarity, and comfort for truth. It was the most difficult choice she had ever made, but she didn't regret it. Not anymore. She turned off the lights and crawled into bed, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. Somewhere miles away, Grant was discovering the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal that had driven a wedge through their marriage. She didn't know when he would come for her or if he even would. But she knew this. If he ever found her again, it wouldn't be because she needed rescuing. It would be because he finally saw her. Midtown Manhattan, the setup. Midtown buzzed with impatient energy as Grant stepped into the corporate archives room, a place he hadn't entered since his father's era. Dust-coated old filing cabinets and dim fluorescent lights flickered like nervous witnesses. He pulled out box after box, scanning for anything related to the sealed accounts Conrad always redirected questions about. Hours passed until he found a padded envelope marked with his father's initials. Inside were documents linking early hotel acquisitions to hidden offshore accounts, all routed to the same financial division Conrad once managed. Grant felt his stomach twist. Maya hadn't stumbled on a coincidence. She brushed against a decades-old crime. The realization hit hard. The board wasn't protecting the company. They were protecting themselves. And Maya had been their easiest target. Grant carried the evidence into his office, spreading it across the conference table like a crime scene. Numbers, signatures, transaction routes. It all connected. His father's legacy wasn't prestigious. It was poisoned. He felt anger rising, not just toward Conrad and Victoria, but toward himself for refusing to see the truth sooner. His phone buzzed. It was Rosa Delgado. "I've analyzed the metadata you sent," she said, "and I have confirmation. Someone accessed Maya's medical portal from inside the company, the same device that rerouted your emails." Grant's pulse quickened. "You can trace it?" "Already did," Rosa replied. "It leads straight to Victoria Hale." Grant swallowed, rage building quietly. The people he trusted had violated the woman he loved in the most personal way possible. Rosa arrived at his office shortly after, carrying a slim laptop and a folder filled with color-coded timelines. She laid everything out with calm precision. Email filters Victoria installed, server access logs from Conrad's department, and cross-reference timestamps that matched the leaked Hamptons clip. They wanted Maya isolated, Rose explained. Once she looked guilty, Conrad would present a stability plan to the board and slowly remove you from decision-making. Grant rubbed his forehead. "And the pregnancy?" Rosa hesitated. "It gave them leverage. A vulnerable spouse is easier to discredit. Someone at the clinic was bribed to access her portal. They weren't just targeting her. They were using her to weaken you." Grant felt guilt claw at his chest. He had played right into their hands, and Maya had paid the price. Grant sank into his chair as Rosa continued flipping through files, pointing out every thread of conspiracy. Each piece fit too well, too intentional. This wasn't corporate rivalry. It was a takeover. "Your silence at the gala helped them more than you know," Rosa added gently. They needed Maya humiliated to validate their narrative. Grant winced, remembering the careless comment he'd tossed into the room without thinking. He'd wounded her publicly while Conrad and Victoria watched from the sidelines, pleased with the damage. Rosa leaned forward. "We have enough for regulators to open an inquiry, but exposing them will cause shockwaves. You need to decide if you're ready." Grant didn't hesitate. "I'm ready, whatever it takes to protect Maya and my child." That afternoon, Grant met Evelyn in a private suite at Ellison Grand's flagship hotel. The skyline stretched behind them, casting long shadows across Evelyn's tense face. "Rosa showed me everything," he said quietly. Evelyn looked down, shame painting her expression. "I thought I was helping the company. I had no idea they were targeting Maya." Grant softened, but only slightly. "Mom, she was pregnant, and they used her as bait." Evelyn pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "Grant, I didn't know. If I had known, we can't undo it," he said. "But we can stop them." Evelyn nodded, tears forming. "What do you need from me?" Grant slid the files toward her. "I need you to stand with me at the press conference. And I need you to tell the truth." They spent hours preparing, sorting evidence with Rosa's guidance. Every detail mattered. Every timestamp, every signature, every access code. Evelyn made calls to a handful of trusted contacts, retired board members who remembered the father's era and had long suspected financial wrongdoing. Their testimonies could reopen sealed investigations. Meanwhile, Rosa contacted federal regulators, hinting at the magnitude of what was about to be revealed. Grant felt time ticking. Each moment Maya remained in Seabrook was another moment she believed he didn't care, didn't notice, didn't fight. He replayed her letter in his mind, the careful handwriting, the restraint she showed even when leaving. He had failed her once. He would not fail her again. This time, he would choose truth over pride, her over everything. News of the sudden press conference spread quickly through the Ellison Grand building. Employees whispered as Grant walked by, noticing the steel in his posture, the determination burning in his eyes. Conrad and Victoria exchanged uneasy glances from the executive lounge as he passed. "He knows something," Victoria muttered. Conrad scoffed, but tension tightened his jaw. "He's bluffing." But neither of them believed it. Grant's movements were too exact, his silence too sharp. Back in his suite, Grant rehearsed a statement with Evelyn and Rosa. Each line crafted a dismantled conspiracy without throwing a whole company into chaos. It was a delicate balance, one his father had failed to walk. Grant intended to succeed. For Maya, for their child, for the family he had nearly lost. The ballroom was transformed overnight. Media risers, lights, microphones, all arranged under Rosa's direction to ensure maximum transparency. Regulators waited discreetly behind the curtain, ready to move the moment Rosa gave the signal. Grant felt a knot of anxiety as he checked his watch. Maya didn't know this was happening. She didn't know he'd chosen to burn the lies rather than live with them. Evelyn touched his arm. "She'll see this eventually," she whispered. "She'll know you fought for her." Grant nodded, though uncertainty lingered. Would Maya believe him after everything he'd failed to protect her from? Before he could answer that thought, Rosa approached. "They're in position," she said. "When you sign the trust, the rest will fall into place." Grant inhaled slowly. It was time. Moments before stepping onto the stage, Grant opened a final document, one that Samir Khan, Maya's attorney, had drafted on Grant's behalf. It was the irrevocable family trust. His entire personal wealth, assets, and shares would be transferred to Maya and their child, secured beyond corporate reach. It wasn't a gesture. It was accountability. He signed the first page quietly, then the second, his initials tight but steady. "Do you want Maya here for this moment?" Evelyn asked gently. Grant shook his head. "This isn't to win her back. This is to protect her from the world I failed to shield her from." Rosa gave a firm nod of approval. "Good. That's the mindset you need." Grant straightened his tie, took one last breath, and stepped toward the blinding lights of the ballroom, ready to expose everything. The ballroom erupted with camera flashes the moment Grant appeared. He stood at the podium, Evelyn on one side and Rose on the other, a united front forged from regret and resolve. He began speaking with steady conviction, detailing his father's crimes, Conrad's manipulation, Victoria's involvement, and his own failures. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the narrative unfolded. For the first time, Grant Ellison wasn't a polished CEO. He was a man taking responsibility. He reached the final page of the trust and lifted it for the cameras. "This," he said softly, "is for Maya Ellison and our child. They deserve the truth, even if I'm the last to earn it." The room fell silent. Behind him, Rosa glanced toward the regulators, waiting in the wings. Phase 2 was seconds away. Live, the ballroom boils over. Grant stepped away from the podium as reporters erupted into a storm of questions, flashes bursting like fireworks across the ballroom. His confession had stunned the room into a breathless pause before chaos ignited. Evelyn rested a trembling hand on his arm, grounding him. Rosa, standing near the edge of the stage, kept her gaze locked on Conrad and Victoria, watching every twitch of panic ripple across their faces. Grant exhaled slowly. This was it, the point of no return. His father's legacy had shattered publicly, and he welcomed the collapse if it meant clearing Maya's name. Every word he'd spoken had been for her and the child she'd carried alone. He scanned the crowd one more time, silently praying Maya would see this someday and understand he finally chose truth over ego. The ballroom doors swung open abruptly as regulators stepped inside, badges flashing beneath the blinding lights. A ripple of gasps spread through the audience. Victoria Hale's face drained of color the moment she recognized the agents approaching. Rosa lifted her chin slightly, her silent signal. Victoria Hale, One of the officers announced. "You're under investigation for corporate fraud, privacy breaches, and evidence tampering." Victoria stumbled back, shaking her head. "This is a misunderstanding," she protested, but her voice quivered. Agents secured her wrists and cuffs as the cameras swarmed, capturing every second. Grant watched, jaw tightened, not out of vengeance, but because he finally understood how deeply she had violated Maya. Justice wasn't relief, but it was necessary. Conrad, however, slipped silently toward the far exit. Conrad Pierce pushed through the crowd, sweating beneath his tailored suit. His eyes darted toward the side hallway, calculating a clean escape before regulators reached him. But 2 hotel security guards intercepted him at the door. "Mr. Pierce, you'll need to stay," one said firmly. Conrad glared. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Grant stepped forward from the stage, voice steady. "They do, and so do I." Conrad's mask cracked, anger bleeding through the edges. "You burned down your entire empire over a woman?" he spat. Grant shook his head. "No, I'm burning down the lies that nearly destroyed her." Security held Conrad in place as regulators closed in. Conrad wasn't arrested yet, but his world was collapsing, piece by piece, under the weight of the truth he had buried for years. Evelyn approached Maya, who stood near the ballroom entrance after arriving quietly with Rosa moments earlier. Her expression was cautious but composed. Evelyn's breath caught as she faced her. "Maya, I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I should have protected you. I should have listened." Maya, exhausted from the chaos around her, replied gently but firmly, "We all should have done better." There was no anger in her voice, just truth. Evelyn reached out but stopped herself, unsure of her place. "You don't owe me forgiveness," she murmured, "but I will spend the rest of my life earning your trust." Maya nodded softly. She didn't know what tomorrow held, but this moment mattered. Grant watched him from across the room, pain and hope woven together in his eyes. When Grant finally approached Maya, the noise of the ballroom faded into something distant and muted. He stopped a few feet away, unsure if he had the right to stand any closer. Maya looked at him with guarded eyes, hurt, tired, but still carrying the quiet strength he'd fallen in love with. "You exposed everything," she said quietly. Grant swallowed, feeling the weight of her gaze. "I should have seen the danger before it touched you. I should have protected you, Maya, not the company." She nodded once. Truth matters, but trust doesn't rebuild in a single speech. Grant accepted that without flinching. "I know. That's why I signed the trust publicly. It wasn't for forgiveness. It was for safety." Maya held his eyes, tried to read the man she once knew from the one standing before her now. Before Grant could say more, Maya's breath hit sharply. Her hand pressed to her belly as a wave of pain tightened across her abdomen. Grant froze. "Maya, what's wrong?" She inhaled shakily. "It's happening," she whispered. Rosa moved instantly. "Her contractions are strong. We need to get her to the hospital now." Evelyn hurried forward, eyes wide with fear. Chairs clattered as people stepped aside, clearing a path. Grant reached for Maya, but she steadied herself. "I can walk," she said softly, though her voice trembled. He hovered close, not touching her without permission, but ready to catch her if she faltered. The press conference, the signatures, the arrests, none of it mattered now. Only her, only the baby. An ambulance waited outside the ballroom doors, its light slicing through the night as paramedics rushed toward them. Grant rode beside Maya, gripping the metal rail of the stretcher instead of her hand, letting her choose closeness. She breathed through each contraction, sweat beading across her forehead. "You're doing great," one paramedic assured her. Grant felt helpless, fear clawing at his insides. He wanted to comfort her, touch her, hold her, but he respected her boundaries. "If you want me closer," he murmured, voice breaking, "just say the word." Maya closed her eyes through another contraction and whispered, "Just stay." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, a thread of connection holding them together as the ambulance sped toward Lenox Hill Hospital. The hospital halls echoed with urgency as nurses guided Maya into a delivery room. Machines hummed, curtains swayed, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air. Grant waited outside for a moment until a nurse waved him in. Maya lay on the bed, breathing hard but steady, her eyes focused and determined. Grant stood near her shoulder, hands clenched. "I'm right here," he said softly. She didn't respond verbally, but she didn't ask him to leave either. Evelyn arrived minutes later, staying quietly against the wall, offering strength without intrusion. Rosa handled hospital paperwork with calm efficiency. This wasn't chaos anymore. It was the beginning of something new, raw, fragile, and painfully real. As contractions intensified, Maya gripped the side rails, her breath coming in harsh waves. Grant felt every tremor of her pain ripple through him. He whispered steady encouragement, letting her set the emotional distance. Between breaths, she finally looked at him. "Grant," she whispered, voice shaking, "this doesn't fix everything." His eyes softened. "I know. I'm not here to fix anything tonight. I'm here because you shouldn't do this alone." Her expression wavered, hurt, fear, and tiny sparks of trust flickering through. A nurse announced she was fully dilated. The room shifted into controlled urgency. Grant leaned close enough for her to hear him clearly. "Our baby's almost here," he whispered, "and I'll follow your lead every step of the way." The final push came with a cry that tore through the room, raw and powerful. Maya gripped Grant's forearm, her strength fierce despite the exhaustion in her body. And then, suddenly, beautifully, the air filled with the sound of a newborn's wail. The doctor lifted a tiny, crying girl into the light. Maya collapsed back against the pillow, tears streaking down her cheeks. Grant's breath shattered as he stared at their daughter, stunned by her smallness, her life, her existence. She's perfect," he whispered. Maya watched him carefully, gauging the sincerity in his trembling voice. He didn't reach for the baby. He waited. When Maya nodded, granting silent permission, Grant stepped forward. His hands shook as he touched his daughter for the very first time. Epilogue. A family reborn. The hours after delivery moved gently, like the world finally exhaled. Regulators arrived at Ellison Grand with warrants supported by Rosa's evidence. Victoria cooperated quickly after her arrest, revealing emails, financial trails, and recordings Conrad never expected to see daylight. By afternoon, Conrad Pierce was officially taken into custody, escorted through the lobby he once controlled with ruthless ease. News channels buzzed with headlines exposing the decades-old crimes rooted in Grant's father's legacy. Evelyn held a trembling hand over her mouth as she watched the coverage, grief and relief mixing in her eyes. Meanwhile, Grant remained at the hospital, refusing to leave Maya and their newborn, even as the world demanded statements. For the first time in years, he didn't care about optics, stock prices, or headlines. His family came first. Maya rested in a dim hospital room, her daughter sleeping peacefully in the bassinet beside her. Grant stood near the window, giving her space but staying close enough if she needed anything. Their silence wasn't awkward. It was healing. A nurse entered with discharge forms, and Maya handled them calmly. "You don't have to stay," she murmured without looking up. Grant nodded. "I know, but I will if you want me to." Maya traced her daughter's tiny fingers, then glanced at him. "We'll need a co-parenting plan. Boundaries. Time. Anything you need," Grant said softly. He meant it. No pressure. No expectations. Just presence. Evelyn arrived with gentle flowers and tearful apologies. Maya didn't reject, but didn't fully accept either. Healing would take time. Later that week, Maya returned to the cottage in Seabrook for quiet recovery, bringing their daughter, now named Lily Grace Ellison, into a world untouched by corporate shadows. Grant didn't follow. He respected her space, visiting only when invited. They crafted a schedule through Samir, shared responsibilities, therapy sessions, communication rules, and a commitment to Lily's stability above all else. Meanwhile, Grant stepped back from daily CEO duties, appointing a non-family COO to ensure transparency and eliminate old corruption patterns. He attended ethics briefings, compliance training, and board restructuring meetings, not because anyone forced him, but because he refused to repeat the mistakes of the past. At night, he watched videos Maya sent of Lily's soft coos and tiny smiles, feeling gratitude sting his eyes. Evelyn visited Seabrook often, helping Maya with quiet, respectful hands, folding blankets, warming bottles, humming soft lullabies to Lily. She never pushed conversation. She simply showed up where needed, letting her actions speak. Maya saw the sincerity, the regret, and the hope stitched into every gesture. Slowly, walls began to soften. Back in New York, Grant rebuilt Ellis and Grand from the inside out, forming an independent ethics board and cooperating fully with ongoing investigations. He spent evenings in the company gym, working off stress instead of hiding behind work. And every night before bed, he sent Maya a short voice message about Lily. Never long, never demanding. Just presence. Just love shown quietly. 3 months later, Grant arrived in Seabrook for a scheduled visit. Lily was in Maya's arms, half asleep after a warm bottle. Maya handed her over gently, watching how carefully Grant held her, how naturally he whispered to her. After a while, Maya stepped onto the porch for air. Grant followed, Lily asleep against his chest. "You've been doing the work," Maya said quietly. Grant nodded. "Because she deserves better. And so do you." They stood in the glow of the porch light, not as a reunited couple, but as two people slowly rebuilding something honest. Maya took a breath. "Maybe we try again." Carefully, Grant's eyes softened, hope flickering to life. "At your pace," he whispered. Inside, Lily stirred softly. Their future wasn't perfect, but it was finally, beautifully possible.